What if the biggest obstacle to wealth isn't your salary, your investments, or even the economy, but your own behavior? Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money isn't a book about getting rich fast or picking the next hot stock. Instead, it argues that financial success is less about knowledge and more about how we think, feel, and act around money. The way we handle risk, patience, and greed determines our outcomes far more than spreadsheets or formulas ever could. In this deep dive, we're not just going to summarize Housel's ideas. We'll analyze why humans make the financial decisions they do, unpack timeless lessons about wealth, and explore practical applications you can use in your own life, whether it's managing your career, planning for retirement, or just deciding how much to save today. This book is for anyone who wants to understand the psychology behind financial success or failure. If you hate introspection, self-reflection, or thinking about long-term consequences, this might frustrate you. But if you're ready to confront the way your mind shapes your money, this book could completely change how you approach your financial life. The context layer. Morgan Housel is a former Wall Street Journal columnist and partner at the Collaborative Fund, an investment firm. Unlike traditional finance authors, he isn't obsessed with formulas or forecasting markets. He's obsessed with behavior. After years of watching smart investors fail and average people quietly build wealth, he realized money is less about intelligence and more about psychology. The Psychology of Money was published in 2020 during a time of economic uncertainty, rising inequality, meme stocks, and social media-driven investing. It landed in a world where financial advice was everywhere, but emotional discipline was rare. Why does it matter today? Because in 2026, investing apps, crypto volatility, AI trading, and online comparison culture amplify emotional decision-making even more. Key terms: compounding, growth that builds on itself over time; tail events, rare events that have massive impact; financial independence, having control over your time because money no longer controls you. Book overview. At its core, The Psychology of Money argues that financial success is not about how much you know, it's about how you behave. Morgan Housel shows that intelligence, data, and technical skill matter far less than emotional control, patience, and humility. The main theme of the book is simple but powerful. Money decisions are driven by personal history, ego, fear, and social comparison more than logic. Two people with the same financial knowledge can end up in completely different places because their behavior differs. Through 19 short chapters filled with stories, from Warren Buffett to lottery winners to ordinary savers, Housel teaches that wealth is what you don't see, that compounding requires time and discipline, and that staying wealthy is harder than getting wealthy. This book isn't about maximizing returns, it's about mastering yourself. Chapter 1. No one's crazy. Most people believe bad financial decisions come from ignorance. But what if people aren't irrational, just shaped by experiences you can't see? In this chapter, Housel explains that people make money decisions based on their personal experiences, not spreadsheets. The main argument is that financial behavior is influenced by individual history. He introduces the idea that what seems irrational to one person may be perfectly reasonable to another. Beneath the surface, this chapter is about perspective. It's not just about money, it's about how humans use limited life experiences to form universal beliefs. We assume our financial worldview is normal, but it's just personal history. In real life, this shows up when generations argue about investing. Someone who lived through 2008 may avoid stocks. Instead of calling them fearful, applying this chapter means understanding their financial trauma before judging their caution. In 2026, social media amplifies financial comparison. We see others' wins without knowing their background, making misunderstanding even worse. This chapter may underplay genuine financial illiteracy. Not all bad decisions are experience-driven, some are simply uninformed. If you remember one thing, financial behavior makes sense once you understand someone's history. Chapter 2: Luck and Risk. Most people believe success is earned and failure is deserved. But this chapter flips that belief completely. In this chapter, Housel explains that luck and risk play massive roles in financial outcomes. The main argument is that success is never purely skill, and failure is never purely stupidity. He uses examples like Bill Gates' access to early computers to show how unseen advantages matter. Beneath the surface, this chapter is about humility. It's not just about money, it's about recognizing that life outcomes are shaped by factors outside our control. In real life, this shows up when entrepreneurs compare journeys. Instead of assuming total control, applying this chapter means building safety margins and avoiding overconfidence. In 2026, viral success stories hide survivorship bias more than ever. The chapter may risk minimizing personal responsibility if misunderstood. Success requires skill, but survival requires humility. Chapter 3: Never Enough. What if the biggest financial risk isn't losing money, but wanting more than you need? In this chapter, Housel explains that knowing when you have enough is one of the most important financial skills. The main argument is that unchecked ambition and comparison can push people to take unnecessary risks. He uses the story of Rajat Gupta to show how greed destroys success. Beneath the surface, this chapter is about ego. It's not just about wealth, it's about how social comparison quietly shifts our definition of success and pushes us beyond rational limits. In real life, this shows up when someone earning well keeps upgrading their lifestyle to compete. Instead of chasing status, applying this chapter means defining your own enough. In 2026, social media comparison makes never enough a daily temptation. The chapter doesn't fully address ambition's positive side. The hardest financial skill is knowing when to stop. Chapter 4: Confounding Compounding. Why does one investor become legendary while thousands with similar skills disappear? The answer isn't brilliance, it's time. In this chapter, Housel explains that compounding works best when given decades, not years. The main argument is that small, consistent returns over a very long period create extraordinary outcomes. He uses Warren Buffett's wealth as an example of time amplifying average returns. Beneath the surface, this chapter is about patience. It's not just about investing, it's about resisting the urge to interrupt growth because results seem slow. In real life, this shows up when people frequently switch investments chasing quick gains. Instead, applying this chapter means staying consistent and letting time do the heavy lifting. In 2026, short-term trading apps make patience harder than ever. The chapter assumes stable long-term conditions, which aren't guaranteed. Compounding rewards time in the market more than timing the market. Chapter 5: Getting Wealthy versus Staying Wealthy. Making money is one skill, keeping it is another. Housel argues that getting wealthy requires risk-taking and optimism, but staying wealthy requires humility and caution. The key concept is survival, avoiding ruin at all costs. In this chapter, it's about longevity. Wealth isn't built by brilliance alone, but by avoiding catastrophic mistakes. In real life, this shows up when someone earns big but overspends or over-leverages. Applying this means prioritizing stability over flashy gains. In 2026, leverage through crypto and options makes survival discipline critical. The balance between growth and caution isn't deeply explored. Getting rich is optional. Staying rich is survival. Chapter 6. Tails You Win. What if most of your effort doesn't matter, but a few rare moments change everything? In this chapter, Housel explains that financial success is often driven by a small number of extreme outcomes known as tail events. The main argument is that a few big wins account for the majority of returns. He uses examples like venture capital and stock market giants to show how rare successes dominate results. Beneath the surface, this chapter is about asymmetry. It's not about being right all the time. It's about staying in the game long enough for a few outsized wins to appear. In real life, this shows up in careers and investing. Instead of quitting after small failures, applying this means allowing room for big breakthroughs. In 2026, tech, AI, and startups amplify tail-driven outcomes. Emotionally, tolerating repeated small losses is difficult. A few big wins often matter more than countless small ones. Chapter 7. Freedom. What if the real return on investment isn't money, but control over your life? In this chapter, Housel argues that the greatest benefit of money is the ability to control your time. The main idea is that financial independence provides autonomy, the power to choose what you do, when you do it, and who you do it with. Beneath the surface, this chapter is about dignity. It's not just about early retirement, it's about reducing dependence and increasing personal agency in a world that constantly demands your time. In real life, this shows up when someone builds an emergency fund and can leave a toxic job. Applying this means valuing flexibility over flashy purchases. In 2026, burnout culture makes time freedom more valuable than ever. Not everyone has equal access to building autonomy quickly. Money's greatest luxury is control over your time. Chapter 8. Man in the Car Paradox. What if buying flashy items to impress others actually impresses no one but yourself? Housel explains that people often spend money to signal status, but observers usually admire the item, not the person. The main argument is that wealth used for show often fails to earn the social respect people expect. Beneath the surface, this chapter is about misplaced motivation. It's not just about cars or houses. It's about human tendencies to equate possessions with identity and status. In real life, this shows up when someone buys luxury brands to look successful on social media. Instead of impressing others, applying this chapter means focusing on financial security and personal fulfillment rather than external validation. In 2026, social media amplifies the pressure to display wealth, making the paradox even more common. The chapter may underplay that status signaling can still have networking or career benefits. People admire possessions, not the person who owns them. Chapter 9. Wealth is what you don't see. What if true wealth isn't the flashy car in the driveway, but the money quietly sitting in your account? Housel explains that wealth is what you don't spend. While people notice visible displays of money, the actual richest individuals build wealth through restraint and savings. The main argument is that actual financial security comes from unspent resources, not outward appearances. Beneath the surface, this chapter is about patience and self-discipline. It's not just about saving, it's about resisting societal pressure to prove success through material consumption. In real life, this shows up when someone lives below their means while quietly investing. Instead of upgrading lifestyle with every raise, applying this chapter means prioritizing long-term financial freedom over short-term status. In 2026, buy now, pay later and social media lifestyles make it easy to confuse wealth with appearances. The chapter may undervalue spending on experiences or quality of life upgrades. True wealth is hidden. It's what you save, not what you show. Chapter 10. Save money. Most people believe building wealth is about high investment returns, but this chapter argues that your savings rate is actually more important than your ROI. Housel explains that wealth is just the accumulated leftovers after you spend what you take in. You can build wealth without a high income, but you have no chance without a high savings rate. The key concept is that saving is the gap between your ego and your income. Beneath the surface, this chapter is about personal control. You can't control the market, but you can control your ego. Saving money is essentially buying options on your future self, giving you the flexibility to wait for better opportunities. In real life, this shows up when you stop buying things to impress people you don't even like. Instead of maximizing returns, applying this means maximizing the efficiency of your current paycheck. In 2026, saving is harder because embedded finance and one-click spending make it effortless to drain your accounts. Resisting this requires more intentional friction in your digital life. The author assumes everyone has a surplus to save. In a high inflation era, many find that after basic necessities, the gap between ego and income is actually zero. The only factor you can fully control in the wealth equation is how much you choose to save. Chapter 11. Reasonable versus rational. What if the mathematically perfect investment strategy is actually the one most likely to fail? Housel argues that being coldly rational can be a trap. Housel explains that humans aren't spreadsheets. The main argument is that instead of aiming to be rational, following the math exactly, you should aim to be reasonable, following a plan you can actually stick with. A strategy that works emotionally is more effective than a perfect one abandoned during a market crash. This chapter is about psychological endurance. It's not just about percentages. Emotions are a variable in every financial decision. A suboptimal plan you can live with often beats an optimal plan you can't. In practice, paying off your mortgage early may earn less than investing, but the peace of mind makes you a more stable investor. In 2026, AI-driven investment tools push rational strategies constantly. They can't account for human panic, making personal guardrails vital. Housel assumes reasonable ensures safety, but for some, it may excuse procrastination or risk avoidance. Don't be a cold calculator, be someone who can stick to a plan. Chapter 12. Surprise. What if history is just a record of events that have never happened before? Housel warns that treating the past as a direct map for the future is risky. Housel explains that the most impactful events, Great Depressions, pandemics, tech booms, are rare outliers. The main argument is that structural changes make the future inherently different from the past. History is best seen as the study of change, not a crystal ball for prediction. This chapter is about the fallacy of induction. Humans crave certainty, but the biggest risks are often the ones nobody imagines. It's not just data, it's understanding our psychological limits in the face of uncertainty. In practice, investors shouldn't rely on historical patterns to predict crises. Instead, build portfolios resilient to any surprise. In 2026, rapid tech leaps like AI make past financial or labor data nearly obsolete. The chapter downplays that human behavioral patterns, greed and fear, still repeat. The most important events ahead will have no historical precedent. Chapter 13. Room for Error. What if confidence alone isn't enough to succeed? Housel argues that building a margin for error is essential when the odds are against you. Housel explains that success isn't just about probability, it's about consequences. Even a 95% chance of winning isn't safe if the 5% loss could wipe you out. The key concept is the margin of safety, giving yourself a cushion so a single mistake doesn't derail your journey. This chapter is about staying power. It's not about being right all the time, it's about surviving when you're wrong. The deeper truth, sometimes the best way to win is simply not to fail catastrophically. In practice, this means having a robust emergency fund. Save 12 months instead of 6. When markets fall or life throws a curveball, the psychological and financial buffer prevents panic and poor decisions. In 2026, lean lifestyles and just-in-time systems reduce natural buffers. Building error room requires consciously resisting the maximum efficiency mindset. Too much cushion can limit opportunity. Extreme caution may prevent growth. A plan only works if it can survive life's inevitable surprises. If you're ready, I can move on to Chapter 14, You and Me, next. Chapter 14, You and Me. What if much of your financial stress comes from copying someone playing a completely different game? Housel explains that rational financial behavior depends on your own time horizon and goals. Bubbles and panic often happen when long-term investors mimic short-term traders. The key concept is the margin of safety, giving yourself a cushion so a single mistake doesn't derail your journey. This chapter is about social contagion. Humans naturally seek validation through social proof, but the truth is there's no single best investment, only the one that aligns with your personal timeline and objectives. In practice, don't get FOMO from friends making quick gains on meme coins or day trades. They may be playing a one-week game while you're building a 30-year retirement fund. Staying in your lane preserves discipline and peace of mind. In 2026, social media feeds mix everyone's games, making it harder to ignore flashy short-term wins. Housel assumes people's games are fixed, but many switch strategies midstream, making his advice harder to follow. Avoid taking cues from people playing a different financial game than you. Chapter 15, The Seduction of Pessimism. Why do negative predictions sound smarter than optimistic ones? Why does doom feel more believable than progress? Housel argues that pessimism is seductive because it appears more intelligent and urgent. The main argument is that progress happens slowly and quietly, while setbacks are loud and dramatic. As a result, we overestimate risks and underestimate long-term growth. This chapter is about attention bias. Humans are wired to notice threats more than gradual improvement. Bad news feels immediate and serious. Good news feels boring. The deeper truth is that optimism requires patience, while pessimism requires only imagination. In real life, investors often pull out of markets during scary headlines. Applying this chapter means zooming out and focusing on long-term trends instead of reacting to daily fear-driven news cycles. In 2026, algorithms amplify outrage and crisis narratives, making pessimism more visible and more persuasive than ever. Excessive optimism can ignore legitimate systemic risks. Pessimism sounds smarter, but long-term optimism usually pays better. Chapter 16, When You'll Believe Anything. What if your financial beliefs say more about your past than about reality? Housel explains that people form financial views based on their personal experiences, especially during their formative years. The main argument is that what you believe about markets, risk, and opportunity depends heavily on when you were born and what economic events shaped you. This chapter is about generational psychology. It's not just about data, it's about identity. Our experiences anchor our expectations, making us overconfident that the way the world works today is how it will always work. In practice, someone who started investing after a bull market may believe stocks only go up. Applying this chapter means questioning your assumptions and stress testing your beliefs against different economic scenarios. In 2026, rapid economic and technological shifts make generational blind spots even riskier than ever. While experience shapes beliefs, access to global data can reduce generational bias more than the author suggests. Your financial worldview is shaped by when you were born, so question it. Chapter 17. All Together Now. What if the secret to financial success isn't brilliance, but a simple formula repeated consistently? Housel brings the book's ideas together into one cohesive philosophy. The main argument is that successful investing doesn't require extreme intelligence. It requires patience, humility, room for error, and long-term thinking. This chapter is about simplicity. Wealth building is less about complexity and more about emotional discipline. The deeper truth, most financial mistakes come from overreacting, not under-knowing. In practice, automate savings, diversify broadly, avoid debt traps, and stay invested. Boring consistency often outperforms flashy strategy. In 2026, financial content overload tempts people to constantly tweak strategies instead of sticking with fundamentals. The simplicity may feel repetitive for advanced investors seeking tactical insights. Long-term discipline beats short-term brilliance.
Chapter 18. Confessions. What does the author actually do with his own money? Housel shares his personal investing approach, a simple allocation between stocks and cash, focused on sleeping well at night rather than maximizing returns. This chapter reinforces authenticity. It proves that financial advice must align with personality, not theory. Build a strategy you understand and can emotionally tolerate, even if it's not optimal. In 2026, influencers share extreme portfolios. Simplicity looks boring, but works. His strategy may not fit different income levels or risk tolerances. Your strategy should match your temperament. Chapter 19. Conclusion. If you forget the charts and statistics, what truly matters about money? Housel concludes that doing well with money isn't about what you know, it's about how you behave. The recurring themes are humility, patience, adaptability, and survival. This final chapter reframes wealth as a behavioral skill. Financial success is a lifelong practice of managing ego, fear, and expectations. Focus less on predicting markets and more on controlling spending, saving consistently, and staying emotionally steady. In 2026, with AI, volatility, and rapid change, emotional discipline is more valuable than ever. The conclusion prioritizes mindset over structural economic realities. Money success is a behavior, not an IQ test. The Core Deep Dive. Pillar 1. The problem: behavior over brain power. The core problem Housel identifies is simple. We treat money like math when it's really psychology. Traditional finance assumes humans are rational actors maximizing returns. In reality, we are emotional creatures managing fear, ego, envy, and uncertainty. Markets don't just move on data, they move on stories. Investors don't panic because spreadsheets change, they panic because narratives change. The danger isn't lack of knowledge, it's overconfidence, comparison, and short-term thinking. Most financial failures aren't caused by ignorance, they're caused by impatience, lifestyle inflation, leverage, and reacting emotionally to volatility. Intelligence doesn't protect you from poor behavior. In fact, it can make you more confident in bad decisions. The real problem is this: money magnifies personality. If you're impatient, money makes you reckless. If you're insecure, money makes you competitive. If you lack discipline, money exposes it. Financial success, therefore, is less about mastering markets and more about mastering yourself. Pillar 2. The solution: survival and compounding. Housel's solution isn't genius stock picking, it's survival. Avoiding catastrophic mistakes matters more than chasing extraordinary gains. Why? Because compounding only works if you stay in the game. One wipeout resets everything to zero. This is why he emphasizes room for error, long-term thinking, saving consistently, ignoring short-term noise, and accepting uncertainty. Compounding is powerful not because returns are high, but because time is long. The quiet power of decades beats the drama of short-term wins. The formula becomes simple. Spend less than you earn, invest consistently, avoid ruin, be patient. This sounds boring, and that's the point. Wealth building is repetitive and emotionally uneventful when done correctly.
Pillar 3. The nuance, the hidden psychology. The advanced insight most summaries miss is this: money decisions are identity decisions. People don't argue about investments, they argue about who they are. A risk-taker sees opportunity, a cautious saver sees danger. Neither is fully wrong, they're just shaped by different experiences. Housel also highlights asymmetry. A few tail events drive most outcomes. That means you don't need to be right often, you need to avoid being catastrophically wrong. And perhaps the most powerful nuance: wealth is invisible. The world rewards visible spending, but financial independence grows in silence. In the end, the psychology of money isn't teaching you how to get rich quickly. It's teaching you how to build a life where money gives you control, not anxiety. Practical takeaways. 1. Control your behavior, not the market. You can't control inflation, elections, or Fed policy, but you can control your savings rate and risk level. Example: instead of panic selling during a recession, continue contributing to your 401k. 2. Wealth is built quietly. Income is visible, wealth is hidden. Example: the neighbor with the modest home but maxed out retirement accounts is wealthier than the luxury car owner drowning in debt. 3. Avoid ruin at all costs. One major financial mistake, excessive leverage, no emergency fund, can erase decades of progress. Example: keeping 6 to 12 months of expenses protects against layoffs. 4. Time beats talent. Consistency over 30 years beats chasing hot stocks. Example: index fund investors often outperform active traders long-term. 5. Define enough. Lifestyle inflation traps high earners. Example: a $150,000 salary in the US can still feel not enough if spending constantly rises. 6. Freedom is the real goal. Money buys autonomy. Example: financial independence allows career flexibility or sabbaticals. 7. Ignore other people's games. Day traders and long-term investors play different games. Example: don't copy TikTok finfluencers if your goal is retirement stability. How to apply this? Automate savings, 401k, IRA, index funds. Build a 6 to 12-month emergency fund. Avoid high-interest consumer debt. Create a reasonable asset allocation you can stick with during crashes. Define your personal enough number. Real scenario: if the market drops 30% in 2026, instead of panic selling, review your long-term plan. If it hasn't changed, stay invested. Mistakes to avoid: over-leveraging for quick gains, comparing your timeline to others, mistaking visibility for wealth, believing this time is different. Critical analysis. Strongest point: the book's greatest strength is reframing money as psychology rather than math. This perspective explains why intelligent people still make poor financial decisions. It shifts responsibility from forecasting markets to managing behavior. What it gets wrong or misses. Housel underemphasizes structural inequality. Discipline alone doesn't overcome stagnant wages, healthcare costs, or systemic barriers in the US. Additionally, the book leans heavily on long-term US market optimism, which may not apply globally.
The advice is powerful for middle to upper income earners, but may feel less actionable for those struggling with basic expenses. Still, as a behavioral framework, it remains timeless. Conclusion and action plan. Behavior matters more than intelligence. Avoid financial ruin at all costs. Wealth is what you don't see. Compounding needs time and survival. The goal of money is freedom. A challenge for you. Open your financial accounts and ask, if my income stopped tomorrow, how long could I survive? Then take one action this week to extend that number. Increase savings, cut one expense, or automate investing. Money isn't about impressing others. It's about building a life where you control your time. If this breakdown helped you think differently about wealth, share it with someone who needs it. And remember, the smartest financial strategy is the one you can stick with.